Hi, welcome back. I hope all that tefillahs from Yom Kippur are answered, and we shall have a tzlacha for the following year. We're up to Yerushalmi Bikkurim Daf Amud Aleph. There's a shir today, and there's a shir tomorrow, and probably after that, the next shir will be after Sukkot. Okay, the Monday after Sukkot. So Chad Cohen Nasib Bas Gevim. One Cohen marries the daughter of a ger and geres. Story comes to Bavov by Al Safsida. He put him on the bench to give him lashes. Rabbi said to Rabbi, Rabbi, didn't you teach us halacha Rabbi Yossi? Now halacha Rabbi Yossi that allows a Cohen to marry the daughter of a ger and a geres. So why should this Cohen get lashes? He said, now the Kohanim were a bit stricter. We touched on this last time. So the Kohanim were a bit stricter, like Rabbi Lezer and Yaakov. The Kohen should not marry the daughter of a ger and geres. Now that was their custom, and that's why I'm giving him lashes. Rabbi said, wait a minute, for a custom you give lashes? Minhag like it. Rabbi says, in kach as chabim b'faisli. If that's what you want to see right to appease me, that I shouldn't give him lashes, well, I'll tell you, okay, I'll take him away from the bench. Minda Kaime, well, when the Cohen was put up and again he didn't get lashes, the Cohen said to Rabbi, okay, you've taken away. So the Cohen, he says, right, now you're not going to give me lashes now. Goody for me. Afani Mutaba. So the Cohen says, I'm going to go ahead and marry this woman. The daughter of the game, it seems I'm permitted. I've already married her. I'm going to stay permitted to her. I don't need to divorce her. Rabbi Yaakov Baridi Baroshia, he said, he says, actually just on that idea, is Nivsak in Bavli, that a Kohen who wants to come and ask in Basin, can he marry? We tell him not to. Like the minhag of Rabbi Lezer and Yaakov. If he's already married her, we don't force him to divorce her. According to others, Rabbi, who was a Cohen, son of Abaya, and he told Rabbi, we don't give lashes, so I'm allowed to go and marry a daughter of Gerim. Rabbi speaking about himself. They say you can't say this. Rabbi is not going to be machal on his own kedusha and go against the minhag which the Kohanim had. Incidentally, I had lashes on Friday.
Well, they do it symbolically.
We do lashes, symbolic lashes, Erev Yom Kippur, yeah. Rabbi Yaakov Oshia, Rabbi Yaakov Aridi Oshia, Masechet Bikkurim Daf, the lashon of the Shulchan Aruch is Kol ha'am loikin. All the people get lashes. That's the lashon of the Shulchan Aruch. Rabbi Yaakov Aridi Oshia, Masechet Bikkurim Daf. There was a family in Durham trying Cohen allow Harav. There was a question about the kashrus of the daughter of the family to marry Cohen. V'shalach Rebbe is Ruminus Lebodkan. Rebbe sent Ruminus to check him out, the yichus of the family. Yeah, the grandmother of that family had become a geres, less than 3 years and 1 day, and then she married a Cohen. He allowed her. So if she becomes Jewish less than 3 years old, then we say she's considered a basula and everything's fine. Rabbi Shiyama, he said, he says that the reason why I allowed it is because he followed Rav Shimon. Now Rav Shimon held a Cohen can marry Gioris who became a Gioris less than 3 years old in 1 day. And Rabbi held like him, and that's why he allowed the granddaughter for Kohuna. Rav Zira said, no, actually everyone will agree to this din of Rabbi, that the granddaughter is kosher for Kohuna. Even the other Tanaim will hold a Gioris a Cohen can't marry, and that the marriage of the grandmother to a Cohen was Be'isur. They would agree that the granddaughter is permitted. So what does he mean? He's explaining that halacha is with a vlad born from an Isuri Isur of Kohuna. So Rav Ziyah b'shem Rav Ada Barachva, Rav Yudah Mati Bar b'shem Rav Avo b'shem Rav Yochanan, vlad, a child born from Isur or Begeres the Kohen Gadol. You know, a Begeres, an older woman can't marry Kohen Gadol, right? He's going to marry Basula. Kosher, she is kosher to Kohuna. That's not halal. The Isur Begeres to Kohen Gadol is not a clear loisase. It's shuhu b'loisase shema b'kachasei. It's inferred from a positive commandment. It says he must marry a basula, implying he can't marry an older wife, right? What comes out, the B'kar the Isur Begeres is learned from the Huisha B'Psula Yikach. Relay Begeres, implying he can't marry Begeres, who's not, because it's not got the basulin skins anymore. And the rule is, If the loisa is coming from a positive asehu, it's got a din like an aseh. Now the din of halal is only someone who's born from an isur loisa aseh, from a negative commandment, forbidden union of a negative commandment, not from an aseh relationship. And since we're saying now Begeres and Cohen is only an aseh, it's learned from an aseh, therefore the child is not forbidden to kahuna. Now the Gemara says, based on this idea, we understand from Zeira that the heta of Rebbe with a Cohen who married Gieris was according to everyone, and similarly we can say with a Cohen who married Gieris, the issue to marry Gieris is learned from an aseh. It says, Ki basula ma'amav yikachisha, he has to marry a basula from his people. So the word ma'amav means not like Gieris. But the rule is, Kol sasa shabbat b'kach is asehu. If it's a negative coming from a positive, it's considered a positive. So the Issa Gieris Cohen is an Issa Aseh. So Halal is only someone born from Issa Kuna of a Laisasa. So therefore, even according to the other Tanaim who hold that Gieris is forbidden to a Cohen, and even if she became a Gieris less than 3 years and 1 day, nevertheless, if the Cohen went and married her, the children are not Halalim, because it's an Aseh, right? And this was the side of the Het of Rebbe with his family in the Doron. That since it was an Aseh problem, it wasn't a Laisa Aseh, therefore the children were not Halalim. Now, Rav Oshia asks, on the side of Rav Zeira, he says, Halal is only born from Yisuri Kohon of a Laisa Aseh. So I asked Rav Oshia asked, now what about second generation Egyptian? Haridah Sheni Shel Mitzri. Second generation Egyptian, not allowed to marry into Klal Yisrael, right? Now that is also only coming from an aseh. It says the third generation are permitted. So from that you infer the second generation are forbidden. And that is like an asehu. And now the din is a Mitzri Sheni who's been with Yisrael Barbera, the daughter is also to Kohuna, even though it's Isra Aseh. Why don't we learn from here for other Isra Kohuna that even Isra Aseh creates a cholol? So Rav Oshia answers the question. He says there's a difference between the two. Also Rav Oshia he says, look, you can't compare an Issur that applies to Kohanim to an Issur that applies to everyone. He says, Lo dami aseh b'Yisrael, la'aseh shenai sheb'Kohanim. Right? You can't compare them. Aseh should be Israel, like the second generation Egyptian, applies to all the Jewish people. Also bakol. So their child is also a forbidden relationship with them. It's forbidden to everyone. Kohanim, Leviim, Israelim. So that's more severe. But I say that only applies to Kohanim like a Gieres to Cohen. Also Kohanim, but more to Leviim Israelim is permitted to everyone else, right? Therefore it's considered a more lenient Issur. Even though, based on this, you can say that as far as Issur say of Kohanim, there's more Issur Kal. And Rav Zira said the daughter is not possible to Kohana. But in Issur say in Israel, which is more severe, then he agrees that the daughter is possible to Kohana. Okay? Right. We learned in the Mishnah how Patropin, so the managers of the orphans, were Ebed, or Ebed Kanani, Vashliach, an agent appointed to bring the Bikurim to the base Mikdash. V'ha'isha, a woman who has Bikurim from her own field. Now these people bring Bikurim, but they do not read the Parsha. Now what about Shliach? Now as far as the Shliach is concerned, we said he brings it, but he doesn't read the Parsha. Now he's allowed to, you can send a Shlichus, a Bikurim through a Shliach, but only if, b'sheliktan, you picked the food, you plucked it out of the ground, with the intention, l'shalchan, to send it biyadacha, through an agent. Yeah, you picked the fruit with the intention to send it through an agent. If you thought you were going to bring it, don't send with someone else. Now, Rabbi Yossi, he didn't actually finish saying what he said. He didn't explain it. So we bring another Amora who says this and he explains. Rabbi Yonah Machasala, he finished off and he explained. Rabbi Zeira, Rabbi Ami, Lakish, B'Shem Rabbi Oshia. Look, you can send Bikurim through a Shliach, but only if Shaliktan, the Balabais gathered the fruit, the Shalchan, with the intention to send it biyadacha with someone else. But if Liktan Lavian who, look, if he's going to bring it, and he gathered it for him to bring it, then don't send with someone else. Lo Shalchan biyadacha. Why not? Look, if it was ready and suitable, that someone should read the Parsha, then someone has to read the Parsha. So don't change it to get a shliach to bring it now, because he can't read the Parsha. Right? If it's fitting to be permitted to be eaten by the Kohenim, and they will read the Parsha, and it's got a din of a chiyuv kriya, because you were going to pick it for you to take, then ein ani toin ela b'kriya. The only way it's permitted to be eaten is if you actually read that Parsha. So if you gathered it, that you're going to bring it, so it's got a chiyuv of reading the Parsha, and then the reading is essential. And since the shliach can't read it, therefore you can't bring it to the base of Mikdash through a shliach.
The shliach can't read the Masechet Bikkurim because it's not his?
Correct. It's not Hadaba Shenasat. It's not the land that you gave it. Unless we're saying that was the intention all along. Mm-hmm. That the owner plucked it with the intention the shliach would bring it. But otherwise not. Ramana says that Rabbi Yossi also agrees to the Hesper of Rabbi Yonah, the way Rabbi Yossi explained it, although he didn't clearly say it. Oh, Ramana, Rabbi Yossi didn't clearly say Hadar Milsa, this matter, that the reason that Bikurim, which was fitting to read, is only printed with reading. But Amar Ichvaseh, he says something similar, that he also agrees to this, because Rabbi Yossi says, Nehirat Kadis Amrat Hadad Rabbi Yossi. Do you remember when it was said this in the name of Rav Oshia, that you can bring Bikurim through a shliach, only if the intention was for the shliach to bring it? But Rabbi Yossi Rav Chanina, he said, Masnisa Pliga. He says, the Mishnah seems to go against this. It says there, Hifrish Bikurav, you separate Bikurim, V'akach Machas Sedeh, then you sold your field. So you separated Bikurim, you sold your field. Maybe you bring the Bikurim, Ve'enoko, you don't read the Parsha. You haven't got land now. So you can't say the land you've given me, you haven't got it. Now, when you separated the Bikurim, you did have land. And the Bikurim was fitting for the Parsha to be read. And based on the rule that Rav Oshia said, if it was fitting to be reading, then I'm afraid it's not permitted unless you read. So this Bikurim, now you can't read it, they're not fitting for eating. And yet the Mishnah says you can bring the Bikurim, even though you can't read the Parsha. And the answer is, Kamno, we explained it, where B'she Nasan Data Limka. From the very beginning, your intention was to sell the field. B'shav Rishona, before you even separated the Bikurim, we knew you were going to sell the field. So there was no Chiv Kriya on this. There was no obligation to read, because from the beginning, you were not going to have a field in place. We see from here, that Rabbi Yossi agrees with Rabbi Yonah, that the reason of the din of Rav Oshia is because Bikurim, which is fitting for reading, can only be permitted if there is an actual reading. Now we ask from a similar Mishnah on Rav Oshia, V'hotanina, we've learnt, Yavesh Ma'ayan. Now you've got a tree, and you've got a stream or well, a pool, the tree's getting sustenance from it, and that well has now dried out. Or Nixas Ha'ilan, or the tree's been cut down, you bring Bikurim, but you can't read the Parsha, because you haven't got lands. You can't say the land you've given me. Now, at the time of Parsha's Bikurim, it was fitting for Kriya. Based on the klal, the Bikurim which was fitting for reading shouldn't be permitted unless you read. So that you shouldn't be able to eat this fruit. So why does the Mishnah say you can bring the Bikurim if you can't eat it? So, the Gemara answers, this Mishnah as well is talking about a case where the well was Yavesh B'shav Rishona, it was dry from the beginning, before you separated Bikurim. There was no Chiyuv Kriya here at all. There was no Chiyuv to read the Parsha from the very beginning. And that's why the Mishnah says you can bring it to the Mikdash, but you don't read the Parsha. Or Kriya Ma'keves, but you're telling me that reading matters? That can't be. The din is, but if the owner doesn't read it, it's still permitted the fruit to be eaten. How can that fit in with the din of Rav Oshia, that if it was fitting for reading, you can't bring it through a shliach because he can't read? Generally, reading doesn't matter. So Amrav Shmuel Baravitz, it depends. When it was fitting for reading, and you just happen not to do it, that doesn't matter. But if it's because you can't do it, that's the problem. So Harayla Kriya and Kriya Ma'keves. Look, yeah, if you got the opportunity to do the reading, and you didn't do it, it doesn't matter.
But you couldn't.
You could have done. But if the Bikurim was brought to the Mikdash in a way where there was no opportunity to read now, and there was an obligation originally for reading, then the reading is essential, and the Bikurim is possible. And that's why Rav Oshia said, Bikurim which was fitting for reading, don't bring it to the Mikdash through a shliach, because the shliach can't read the Pasha of Bikurim. Another din, if the owner of the field liktan, he gathered the Bikurim with intention l'shalcham biyad acher, to send through someone else. Lo yishalchem biyad acher, then don't change your mind to send through another person. Because, Shema, if we forbid you to use someone else, you might end up bringing it yourself. You might bring it. And then you can read the Pasha Bikurim, that would be the best mitzvah. Okay. Now we talk about another din, about a Yoresh who brings Bikurim. Yoresh may be an inheritor, somebody inherits. He brings Bikurim, but he doesn't read the Pasha. What are we talking about? Now, if he inherited it and his father's still alive, and he's fitting to inherit, so in this situation, Shluchayu, he is the shliach of the father. We've already learned the shliach can bring Bikurim, doesn't read the Pasha. But even if he's bringing Bikurim la'achamisas, like after the father dies, then he's inherited it, and the Bikurim is shalohen, it's his completely. And why does Rav Yechon say he doesn't read? And akiyanan kiyamin, what are we talking about? Shaya aviv chayla amasukan. So, aviv chayla amasukan. So his father was seriously ill, and when they're gathering the Bikurim, the father dies before he brought the Bikurim to the Mikdash. You might have thought, since the father was seriously ill, so therefore, when he gathered the Bikurim, it's as if it belonged to the son already. And the son inherits, and he can read the Pasha. So Rav Yochanan says, no. Not only that, that's not the case, but at the time when he gathered it, the father was alive. The son has not yet inherited it, so the son who inherits cannot read the Pasha of Bikurim. Okay. Now we learn to the Mishnah, a woman who has Bikurim in her own field, she can bring Bikurim, she doesn't read the Pasha. Now bring a brisa, where we're saying a married woman, the husband brings Bikurim from an achasim and he reads the Pasha. Kesiv it says, in the Pasha of Bikurim, you will rejoice, all good that Hashem gives you and your household. Now your household is Melamed, Chada, maybe Bikurim, and Nefse Ishta, you can bring Bikurim from your wife's estate. Okay. Right, the fruit that grew in the lands of Nirse Melug, where the principal belongs to the wife and the husband is eating the fruit. V'kari, and he reads the Pasha. Whereas Shlakishama, he said, this din the husband reads Bikurim from the wife's estate is la'acha misa, after the wife dies. Then he inherited it. Habachayin, however, while she is alive, no, he can't read the Pasha. And the reason is, while the wife's alive, he only has peiros, he has the right to the fruit. He hasn't got anything in the land. He can't say the land that you gave me when he has no ownership of the land. Rav Yochanan, he said, there's no difference if she's alive or dead. It's the same thing. The husband can read the Pasha Bikurim, even when the wife's alive, the land of Nirse Malug is considered belonging to the husband. Now we explain in the view of Rish Lakish, why does the pasuk has to say, why do you need a pasuk that what he inherits from the wife, he brings Bikurim and can read the Pasha? So Rish Lakish, he says here is Kedate, fits in like the view elsewhere. Rish Lakish Shama, he says, he says, you know something, you don't really inherit one's wife Minat Torah, only rabbinical. So I understand why we need a special pasuk or beisecha that you can bring Bikurim from your wife's estate if she died and he reads the Pasha. You understand? He didn't really inherit from the Torah, so we have a pasuk to say, well, he can still read Bikurim and read the Pasha. Now, what about, is the Pasha Bikurim and putting them on the Mizbeach, is that essential? Rabbi Yechim Shem Rav Osha, Hanacha, putting it down in front of the Mizbeach, Me'akeves is essential. And if you don't, you can't eat it. But ain't Kriya Me'akeves, but reading the Pasha is not essential. Well, there's a mitzvah to read, but the ever you haven't read, the Kohen can still eat the Bikurim. Well, Tanina, we've learned Ha'echel Bikurim Anshalei Karalen. If you eat Bikurim before the Pasha, he gets lashes. So you see, reading is essential. Otherwise, there's no lashes on eating it. How can Rav Osha say that reading doesn't matter? So Rav Osha of Yehuda B'Shem Shmuel says the Mishnah in Makkah is saying there's lashes on eating Bikurim before you read the Pasha to Rabbi Akiva. That's the view of Rabbi Akiva. The Chachamim argue, they say reading doesn't matter. There's no malchus on eating Bikurim before you've read. Rav Yochanan Shem Rav Osha fits in like the Chachamim.
You see, but if we're
Halachas like
going
them.
to Rabbi Kiva, that's quite a harsh punishment.
He's saying if you eat
For
the
some
Bikurim before...
the Rabbanan say, that is not even a chiyuv.
Yeah, he's saying it's
Quite
essential.
extreme.
You have to read, you get lashes for eating Bikurim before you've read the Parsha, yeah. He says it, even when it says Eida Ma'akeves, it doesn't mean L'chatzchila the Kohen can go and eat Bikurim before reading. There's definitely a mitzvah to wait till the owner reads the Parsha. What it means is, there's no lashes if they happen to eat it before reading. Right, we don't want them running and, the food's here, right, grab up boys, right? We don't want that. You've got to wait till the owner to say, read the Parsha. Okay. Now, what's the source of the words of Rabbi Kiva? Rabbi Yossi boy, hi done Rabbi Kiva. What's the source of Rabbi Kiva that creates so essential that, in Makkos as lashes? Oh, Rabban, Shammai Sabatani, I heard my father used to learn in a brayso. It's what the difference between the Chacham and Rabbi Kiva. He says, Hanacha me'akeves. Putting it before the Mizbech is essential. And that allows the heter for the Kohen to eat. But reading the Parsha is not essential. But Rabbi Kiva kriya me'akeves. Rabbi Kiva says even reading is essential. Now what's the reason of the Chachamim who make a difference? Rabbi Yaakov Barach Hashem Rabbi Lazar, Matam Amru, why did the Chachamim say that Hanacha is Ma'akeves, putting it down is essential? They should know Hegis Makol. That's anyone who brings Bikurim. But the reading doesn't apply to everyone.
Even if it's shliach.
Everyone has to put it down. Another reason for the difference between putting it down and reading, also the name of Rabbi Lazar, the reason why the Chachamim hold putting it down is essential, the pasuk mentioned it twice. Once it says you put it in front of the Mizbeach, and the second time you put it before the Mizbeach, before Hashem Lekecha. So it's mentioned twice, so it's essential. Why does Rabbi Lazar actually say two reasons in the view of the Chachamim? Amar Abba Mori, Tate, two explanations said in the name of Rabbi Lazar why according to the Chachamim Hanacha is essential. They're both needed. Chadok of Yehuda. One of them fits in like the view of Yehuda, but Chadok Rabbanan, like the Chachamim. So Chadok of Yehuda, one explanation is like the view of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, he said, L'tzarech nishnes. He says, well, actually putting it down was needed. You had to put it twice in the Torah to tell you Bikurim needs waving. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, the din of putting it down is only mentioned in the Torah once. You don't have a double mention, because one's for waving. And based on that, explained Rabbi Lezer, the reason why it's put before the Mizbeach, why is it Ma'akev? That's why he had to give another reason. It applies to everyone who brings Bikurim. But Chadok Rabbanon, the second explanation fits in like the Rabbanon. The inner Morim, they would say that Hanacha is Shalol Tzarech Nishnes. Actually, I didn't really need to mention it a second time. And it's only written to learn a din of waving. It was written, it was not written, it wasn't needed a second time. It was only written to learn a din of waving. And based on that, Rav Lass said the reason why Hanacha is essential, the Torah wrote the idea of placing it down twice to tell me that Hanacha is essential. Okay. We carry on, yeah.
Yep.
The following cases where they bring Bikurim but they don't read the Parsha. Now it says in Basra, there's Machlokes, what's the din about if you buy 2 trees in your friend's field? And it wasn't clear in the sale about the land. Do you get the land with the 2 trees or not? According to the Tanna Kama, the buyer does not acquire the land around the tree, and even not the place of the tree. According to Meir, you've acquired the land between. So what about if you buy 2 trees? What about Bikurim? You buy 2 trees in your friend's field and you didn't explain what about the land. Maybe you bring Bikurim, but you don't have to read the Parsha because you didn't acquire the land of the trees. You can't say the land you've given me. He says maybe Bikurim. You bring Bikurim, you read the Parsha. He says you buy 2 trees, you also acquire the land. Yaveh Shema'ayan, which is the case we had before, if the stream that's providing the water for the tree has dried out, or the tree's got cut, maybe Veda Koreh, you can bring Bikurim but don't read the Parsha, as if you've got no land. Rabbi Yehuda, he said maybe Bikurim, he says you can read, and you can bring Bikurim. Min Achag V'ad Chanukah, so from Sukkot to Chanukah, maybe you can bring Bikurim, Veda Koreh, but you don't read the Parsha. You can't say you should be v'samachta b'chalatov when it's after Sukkot. Rabbi Yehuda, he says maybe Bikurim, you can bring Bikurim and you can read the Parsha. Now, the first case in the Mishnah, according to the Chachamim, you buy 2 trees in your friend's field, you bring Bikurim, but you don't read the Parsha. Rabbi Yosef Chanina Boy, he asked, Now, according to Chachamim, whether you buy Kala Ilan Echad, you buy one tree in your friend's field, like Hanakaki, you don't got the land. Shani, if you buy two trees, like Hanakaki, you haven't got the land. So why do they hold there's a difference as far as Bikurim? That what? If you buy Echad, one tree, Ada maybe, you don't bring Bikurim at all, Kalika. And Shanaim, if you buy two trees, they hold maybe you bring Bikurim, Ve'ena Kaire, and you don't read the Pasha of Bikurim. So why is it that there's a din of Bikurim with two trees? Oh, there you're asking things which it was really hard for the Chacham in the base of Medrash. You're asking these things, you're sort of embarrassing me, because it was really hard for them. But they do say here, the Gemara doesn't answer it. What was the idea of the Sfar of the Chacham in the Mishnah? That two trees, you bring Bikurim even though you don't acquire the land. In the Bavli, Rabbi explains, Rav Shimon ben Lakish, that he explains, they weren't sure. Look, when you buy two trees, do you get land or not? Because of the suffix, when you buy two trees, you don't get land. But it's a suffix, maybe you have acquired land. So as far as Bikurim, you have to be strict, and you have to bring Bikurim from the fruit of the tree.
But do you read?
But since, one second, no, you won't read. But since you only bring it out of doubt, you don't read the Parsha. Right? And then, because otherwise it looks like lies. The land you gave me, I didn't give you any land. Right? You can't say that when you haven't got any land. Okay? But when you buy one tree, the Chachamim were clear you have no land. So they said, you buy one tree, don't bother bringing Bikurim. Reb Meir wasn't sure, even with one tree, maybe you acquired some land. Therefore he held, you acquire one tree, you should bring Bikurim, but don't read the Parsha. But as far as two trees, he was clear, you acquire the land, so he held that maybe Bikurim, you bring Bikurim, and you read. Okay. Where are we? Rabbi Yossi, huh? Sorry. Yom Shemaya, if the well has dried out, what the tree got nourishment from, or the tree got cut, Rabbi Yehuda said, you bring Bikurim, and you read the Parsha. Now, why does Rabbi Yehuda hold that if the tree has stopped from bringing out fruit, you can still read the Parsha? Rabbi Yehuda, he treats it like the stubble on the grain. Basically, it's not the source of the growth of the grain, but it passes the nourishment through from the ground to the grain, so that the tree is not the main source of giddle or the fruit, but it goes through from the ground to the fruit. And the main growth of the fruit is from the ground. Right? Therefore, he holds that the tree which is not, even if the tree which is not producing fruit, you can still say the land you've given me, because the land is still there. Now, Taman Tanina, we've learnt in Brachas, so if you said Hadama Bracha on fruits of the tree, you fulfill your duty. Now, Rav Chizkiah, Rabbi Shem Rav Yaakov Baracha, this Mishnah implies the main growth of a fruit is from the ground. So if you said Hadama, you still use your duty. So if you said on the fruit of the tree Hadama, you fulfill your duty. That is Rabbi Yehuda. That's the view of Rabbi Yehuda. Just like we find with Bikurim. Rabbi Yehuda Ovid is Hilan as Kikashin. He treats the trees like the kashin of grain. The main growth comes from the ground. But the Chachamim then, who seem to argue as far as Bikurim, they hold if the tree's cut down, you don't read the Parsha. They hold the main growth is from the tree. So they seem to argue on the Mishnah in Brachas. They would say, if you said Bar Pri Adama on an orange, you won't fulfill your duty. Oh, Rabbi Yossi, no. They would also agree. Divrei HaKol, everyone agrees, even the Chachamim agree with Bikurim that you say on a fruit tree, Habari Pri Adama on an orange, you fulfill your duty. The reason is, because Persa Ilan, Bichlal Persa Adama, they're included in fruits of the ground. Yeah, they also get nourishment from the ground. They in Persa Adama, Bichlal Persa Ilan, but fruits of the ground is not included in fruits of the tree. Now, after the Mishnah taught, what about buying two trees within your friend's field? What about buying a field and it has fruits which has ripened? You have a field full of grain which is still connected to the ground. What about the one who buys the field? Do you bring Bikurim? Do we say, well, the field wasn't in your domain when it grew, you don't bring it? Amalei says, why not? Why should you not bring Bikurim? I understand the question where the crop was still moist at the time of the sale. So when you bought it, it still needed the ground a bit. So it's got all the growth from your land, Chaim Bikkurim. But what about Afilu Yevesha? Even when it's dry, and it didn't need the land at all. Amale, he said, Afilu, even if it was Yevesha, it was dry at the time of the sale, the buyer has to bring Bikurim. And not only that, Afilu Katsura, even if he's already sold the field and the crop has already been cut and it's on the ground, the buyer has to bring Bikurim. Now, Me'ata, if that's the case, that if you buy a field and there's grain cut on the ground, you bring Bikurim, then Afilu Chitin, if you just buy the wheat in the market, you should bring Bikurim. He says, Kachanu Omrim, you only say Alakach when Ashuk maybe Bikurim. You buy wheat from the market, you have to bring Bikurim? Definitely not. That's not the fruit of your land, right? You have to say, just like you buy wheat from the market, you don't bring Bikurim. So if you buy cut grain together with a field where it grew, you should not bring Bikurim. That's the question. And Ravila doesn't actually answer the question. Okay? Some say Ravila didn't bother to answer it. He makes a chiluk. He says if you buy wheat without land, there's a difference between buying the grain and the land. He doesn't accept the svara. There's no difference. He holds there is a difference. But he would say if you buy grain and the land, you would say you would bring Bikurim from it. Okay? To be continued, Rabbi Stein.